Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah ta'ala wa barakatuh. I'm Bilal Ali Hugh and you're watching Islamic Action TV.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa ta'ala wa barakatuh. My name is Mohammed Solomon and you're watching Islamic Action TV.
Okay, so we're going to get into some Q&A.
Are you, Islamic Action, the same group as Farrakhan's Nation of Islam?
Okay. Interesting question. Ultimately, we are a separate organization. Islamic Action is a UK-based Islamic, Orthodox Islamic organization. We follow the teachings of the Ahlul-Bayt in terms of our Islam. However, in terms of our social, economic, political perspective and outlook, it will be very much like what was taught by the Honourable Marcus Garvey, what was taught by various organizations like the Black Panther Party, different organizations that have existed in the diaspora. We use materials like the materials presented to us by Dr. Francis Chris Welsing. If it's the Doctor Who writ Black Skin, White Mask.
That's right.
It's the materials of Naim Akbar. It's the materials of Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. So we look to the knowledge from France Fanon. That was the one, Black Skin, White Mask and Wretched of the Earth. We look to materials of that nature to inform our socio-political perspective, or to give us a context of where we are. Quran and Sunnah, yes, but to give us a context of our plight or our situation or our potential as a people. That's the kind of materials that we look to. So Islamic Action is not the NOI or Louis Farrakhan's Nation of Islam. That's not to be pejorative or disparaging, but it's just to make a clear distinction, because we come from a black conscious perspective, so people may make that mistake.
Yes.
So we have to put that straight. And also, just to throw in one more thing about the Louis Farrakhan's Nation of Islam. I mean, I'm wondering, does that differ from the Nation of Islam as we know from the time of Elijah Muhammad, where we know that he publicly declared his son, his seventh son, Warith Muhammad, to be, this is the man to follow after me. After I've left the scene, this is the man to follow. And we know that Warith Muhammad, when he was alive, may Allah give him ease in the grave, the Imam led the community into a Bilalian type movement, and to what would be considered more orthodox Sunni Islam.
Yes.
That was the direction. He said he disagreed with his father's religion. I think I heard him quoted on the BBC documentary. I disagree with my father's religion, I put that down. But in terms of his politics, I held on to the politics of do for self. I don't know if you're going to jump in there and take it to a next level, Ikhwan, Muslimin.
Shukran, ya akhi, thank you. Let me just chop this up now for the viewers out there in Islamic TV land. Very, very apt what the brother is saying. This is very important for us to understand that Minister Louis Farrakhan's Nation of Islam, some people have even called it Nation of Islam. Why do we say the Nation of Islam? Because, as the brother so eloquently pointed out, we know for a irrefutable fact that Elijah Muhammad designated his son Walid Muhammad as the heir apparent to the teaching of the Nation of Islam. That means that when Elijah Muhammad died in 1975, yes, died, brothers and sisters, when he died in 1975, he elected and selected his son Wallace, the seventh son, with the same title, WD, or Muhammad, as WD Fard, as Master Farad. And Master Farad pointed to the stomach of Clara before Wallace was even born and said, this seventh son shall be the one to lead the Nation of Islam when the time comes, before the end of days. So we know for a fact that from 1975, for 3 years, to 78, 79 roughly, Minister Farrakhan, Louis Walcott X, was following Walid Muhammad. He accepted the teachings of Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He accepted that this was the new, this was the person for everyone to follow, and he fell in line with that teaching. However, due to people like Akbar Muhammad coming to Minister Farrakhan and saying that because Walid Muhammad has now created an inclusive mosque, a mosque welcoming white people, a mosque welcoming Arabs, a mosque welcoming other nations, they believe he fell away from the teachings and now he's not legitimate to be followed. So they made the decision amongst themselves to select Farrakhan, elect Farrakhan, and make Farrakhan the new follower of a division of Nation of Islam, but not the Nation of Islam. Why do we say this? Because we know Silas Muhammad has his Nation of Islam. His nation is called the Lost Found Nation of Islam. So they have different sects amongst the nation, but in all due respect, the only real sect is the Bilalian movement of Wallenstein Muhammad, and these are the people who really and truly, if you are a Nation of Islam follower and you follow the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you should be following these people. Because according to Wallenstein Muhammad, who I met, who I spoke with
In person.
and I asked him this question in person, did your father die on the deen? He said yes. His father renounced the teachings that Master Farad Muhammad was Allah in person. He said, my father told me that you're supposed to take the nation now to the level of accepting all humanity, because that nation he had was for a time, and that time had now come. So the death of the European, to him, was the mental death and a spiritual death that now black people now must move into a new phase. So unless he's lying, which I don't believe he was, Farrakhan's Nation of Islam is Farrakhan's Nation of Islam. But we said nothing wrong to the brothers in the Nation of Islam and the sisters in Farrakhan's Nation of Islam, because you're our brothers and sisters in the deen.
And do your thing.
Do your thing.
That's your thing. That's your perspective. I don't think we can make by making this analysis of who was the correct person to be followed doesn't make Minister Louis Farrakhan insignificant. We can't write him out of history almost where he's not the real name. You know, even some Orthodox clerics say that, Farrakhan's not a real Muslim or he's not a real Muslim leader. You might say that, but they came exactly. We saw in public Orthodox scholars going on stage and putting a turban on his head and things of that nature. So it says something about obviously the way that they value him or they acknowledge his work on a grassroots level, inshallah.
Inshallah ta'ala.
One of the controversial teachings of the original Nation of Islam is that white people cannot be Muslim. What is your response to that, and is that teaching still valid if it ever was?
To my understanding, that teaching has never been legitimate in Islam. Any human being from any ethnic, linguistic, geographical background can be a Muslim. A Muslim is one who, there is two types of situations where a person is considered a Muslim according to the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt. That a person according to the Fuqaha, which is the people who derive Islamic law, the scholars of Islamic law, we call them the Fuqaha as a generic term for the jurists.
That's right.
They teach that a person is either born to Muslim parents or one of their parents is a Muslim. And so according to the Sharia, that would make that person, that child of that union, a Muslim automatically, according to the laws of Sharia. Or a person makes their Shahada, they acknowledge that there is nothing worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad Mustafa al-Amin, peace and blessings be upon him, the son of Abdullah, is the final messenger of Allah, and that makes him a Muslim full stop. White, black, and whatever gradation exists in the human family. That's my humble understanding. I'm not a scholar, as I always like to point out. I don't have ijazah to wear turban or to give fatwa or hukum, but from our sitting with the students of Islam and the students of knowledge, we gain this understanding. So we just want to share the little bit that we have. But that's my understanding.
MashaAllah. Just to add to that, I think that it's very important that as Muslims, we understand that we are one family. We are from the family of Adam alayhi salam and from our mother Hawa Eve alayhi salam. Now, in Islamic Action, we believe in bringing the truth to you, brothers and sisters, whether you like it or not. We believe in being absolutely in line with what Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Ahlul Bayt, have told us, as well as what Al-Quran is saying. Now, we know for a fact all humanity came from a black man and black woman. But within that black man and black woman is the gradations, the shades, the DNA to give rise to all the nations on this earth. Now some nations are disagreeable. We can't deny that. You can't deny that.
They can't deny that.
We know for a fact that some nations have been the skunk of the planet Earth. Some nations have caused havoc, terror, and destruction, and every law known on the statutes taken without leave without consent, raping and murder. They've broken their own laws.
Fact.
It's a fact. So because we're Muslim, because we're Islamic Action, because we're about the action of Amal, making sure that we speak the truth as much as possible when it comes to these evidences and presenting our facts, we have to say that yes, we are all human beings. We're all Muslims, whether we're black or red or yellow. However, we also have to call a spade when we see people acting in a disagreeable manner. And we know that certain nations have acted disagreeably. So today we understand that certain nations took this teaching of Al-Islam and they used and abused it and enslaved other nations with it. We know that some of our African, Pan-African brothers hate Islam. They despise Islam. They think it's a slave religion. Brothers and sisters, we're here to tell you today, this is far from the truth. This is another lie. Because you've been bamboozled, you've been had, you've been took. Because a disagreeable nation takes a pure teaching and makes it impure, does not in any way distract from the teaching. Because we understand that, yes, brothers and sisters, in Islam, there should be colour blindness, but there isn't, brothers and sisters. Because wherever we see the black Muslim, or we see the person of black Christian, or the black Hebrew, or somebody of hue, man of hue, they're on the bottom of the ladder. So we're here to say that, yes, we don't discriminate against people of different hues or ethnicities, but neither do we bow down to them, neither do we suck up to them,
Good teacher.
and neither do we look to them anymore for our future or our goals. Those brothers of different nationalities who will even want to learn and suck from the wisdom of Islamic Action, you can learn and suck from us, but you will never direct Islamic Action. You will never stop the rise of the black African Muslim in this day and time. You can be amongst us and work for us, but there's time when we as a family need to get together and do for self. And this is what it's about. So we believe in working in cooperation with other nations, but do not let them lead us in any direction, but other than Al-Islam and a way of uplifting of the black man and black woman in this day and time. Hope that's answered your question, brother.
Nice.
Following on from that, African people seem to be deeply involved in religion and spirituality, but globally they seem to be struggling. What's your economic program?
Okay, economics. This is a very good question, because if you think about where we're living in the UK and we're living in London, this is one of the most expensive cities in the world.
Very expensive,
and
yes.
you know, as much as we can talk about spirituality and we speak about religious concepts and ideas and practices,
Yes.
There must be something that addresses the basic needs of food, clothing and shelter.
That's correct.
So if we can talk about economic plan, if we can talk about economic development, there's an idea of microeconomics that is very attractive, or idea of, some people use the term Islamics. And this is an idea about, one, pooling resources, like when, for example, our parents came here and when they bought their own homes, because they had something which was called partner.
Partner, yes.
Yeah, partner. They call it box. They call it susu. They got different Caribbean islands. They got
Maybe in
different names for it.
America or...
I'm sure they got a name for it. In
Europe,
African American cousins must have a name for it. In Africa, African cousins family must have a different name for it. But we know that it exists in different forms. They got, different labels. But one of the things that we found out is that living in the UK, growing up in the 80s, the 70s and the 80s, we found that our parents came from, our parents weren't necessarily Muslims, us as African Caribbean Muslims, our parents weren't Muslims, but they had a self-pride, a self-belief, and a cooperation, you understand, when it comes to dealing with economics. So I grew up in a household, for example, where people would come to my mother's house and they would leave me money, £50, £80, and say, give that to your mother. I'll be playing in the street and they say, your mum, no, she's not in them, give me £70 and go in the house and leave it on the mantelpiece, or whatever. People would come all the time.
Good old days.
Partner.
Good old days.
House was bought out of that. Different people would, fly to New York on that, or open business. So we
over siblings.
So we're using that same good old-fashioned mother teaching to inform our economic programs. So we pool our resources, and then we invest in a particular brother or sister in the community, not as a gift, not as a charity. Because I said, growing up in the 70s, 80s, we saw something being bred into us as African Caribbean people, like a dependency culture, where we left, those of us that were leaving home started to leave our parents' teaching of do for self and kind of fall into the housing benefit, and if we want to do something, we got to go to the council and get a grant from a council, and then they start to direct what you can do in your program and what you can't do. You become too dependent. There's nothing wrong with the charities, they're fine, but some things are supposed to be independent. Some messages are not supposed to be independent. I mean, some messages have to be independent because you have to talk with bass in your voice. So ultimately, we're going to invest in small businesses, and they pay that back. Not a gift, but an interest-free loan.
So teach. So the point, the matter is, what you're saying is that you don't give the man a fish, but you teach him how to fish.
Boom.
So he can feed himself
And his family.
and his family. All praise is due to Allah.
Alhamdulillah.
Well, thank you, brother, for your questions. I thought they were very enlightening and elucidating. We hope that the watching audience benefited, mashallah. So
Inshallah,
until next time, it's Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah wa ta'ala wa barakatuh for me, Muhammad Solomon, Islamic Action TV.
And assalamu alaikum rahmatullah ta'ala wa barakatuh from Bilal Ali Hugh. Till next time.